right. Carry on my wayward son. You will run. You can be. Don't you cry no more. Don't you cry no more. My wayward son. You will run. You can be. Don't you cry no more.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. It is Thursday, Thirsty Thursday, friends. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We are almost into the weekend, but not quite. We do have a few stories to discuss tonight. These are crazy times. Some would say really interesting times. But here we are. So, did I hit go live on Rockfin? Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. I just want to make sure I did go live on Rockfin. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know if I did or didn't. Give me a second and let me see. I don't know if I went live on Rockfin. Oh, no, I didn't. Here we go. Sorries. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to go ahead and start off. We're going to give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron first. So let me go ahead and bring their beautiful names up onto the screen. Patrons in the house. All right. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's go ahead and give it up for M. Sadler and David Brown. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'm not sure why I said David's name that way. It just hit me in the moment. All right. So I want to start off by giving shout outs to people in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's story. So let me go ahead and start from the very beginning. Shout out to Buds Not Bombs. That was not the beginning. But what's up? Says hello to Gamer. Greetings, Lorez says, sup, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Great show with JB. What a joke Kyle is. Cheers for Gabon. But really, all of Africa that's rejecting neo-colonialism, now I just hope no war. Smash the like, y'all. Go ahead and hit that like button, guys. Shout out to Hannah, says Tucker telling everything now. Yeah, we're going to get into that. He's got a lot to say in this interview that he had of Adam Carolla. So shout out to Dabby Dab, says, whoop, whoop. How's it going, Sabby fam? Don't forget to show that like button some love. Greetings, Robert says, oh God, more Kylie menagerie. Greetings. Whoopsie. I almost hit the same one again. Greetings, ACAB, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, everyone. Greetings, Zacharoni says, hello, all. Shout out to Samuel, says, sup, y'all. What's going on, gamers, says, hello. Greetings, Mark says, Sabby. What's up, Mark? Shout out to Eric, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, yo, Thursday peeps, here we go. Greetings, Bad Cookie says, hello, everyone. Let's start the show off right by hitting that like. Shout out to Soul says, oh, just notice the song. Greetings, Randy says, agreed, gamer. Good evening, Sabby comrades. Shout out to Jay says, hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. Greetings, Kim says, hello, all. Shout out to Red says, hi, Sabby. What's going on, Johnny says, hello, Sabby. Greetings, Rick says, hey, y'all. What's going on? Just in case says, Sabby dooby doo. Greetings, Simply C says, evening, everyone. Shout out to don't want to make sure I hit a repeat. DJ Leader says, killing it on YouTube today, Sabs. Thank you so much. I hope you guys saw the interview with Glenn Greenwald. I was on System Update last night, which is mainly on Rumble. If you want to see the full show for System Update, you have to watch that on Rumble. Similar to like Kim Iverson show and Russell Brand, like the full shows are on Rumble. Great conversation that I had there with Glenn. Glenn is awesome. Shout out to Carlos says, hello. Greetings, Carrie says, if we get U.S. citizen-owned utilities and resources, we can end poverty and fix reparations. I hear you there, Carrie. I totally hear you. Shout out to Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says hello to Gamer and Saul. Greetings, Dr. Nick says hi, everybody. Shout out to Joe says hi, perfect people. Greetings, Asunta says hello, everybody. Shout out to Pirate Alex says, hey, guys. Greetings, my comrade JB says, hello, everyone. Sabs, we exceeded our fundraising goal for the Orlando chapter. I just want to thank you and RBN for being such a huge encouragement for me to organize. And I thank you too, JB. I mean, you guys encourage me and push me to like do more and all that stuff. And congratulations. I'm so glad you met the goal. If not, I was going to announce that tonight, actually, by the way, your fundraiser, but you met the goal. That's awesome. JB's organizing down there in Orlando, Florida. So shout out to JB. Greetings, Ashura says, let's go. The Black Queen of YouTube is here. I'm not a queen. Greetings. Go start. Those are emojis and they don't come up on StreamYard for some reason, but welcome. Shout out to P says, I'm subscribing after the 3rd. That's when my retirement comes in. That is interesting. Welcome, P Smith. Shout out to Dwayne, who's a Sabby member, says, hi, y'all. And what is going on? EMK says, what up, Sabby? There was a classmate of mine when I was in undergrad, like my freshman year, and he used to greet everybody that way. Like, what up? All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into that thumbnail to show you what we are discussing tonight. I think you'll like these stories. A little bit of difference here. Tonight, we are discussing Tucker Carlson's Obama claim. And actually, it's not just Obama. Tucker Carlson has basically dropped the bomb, so to speak, in this interview that he had recently with Adam Carolla, not just about Obama, but in reference to the media and the deep state. Everybody needs to hear this. It's an important message. We're also going to discuss Grayzone funds. So that picture there of Max Blumenthal, we have a video clip I'm going to show you of Max explaining what happened to the Grayzone. And then I also have some good news update in reference to the Grayzone funding situation. We're also going to discuss Kyle Kulinski shames Cornel West. Yeah, man. I don't really know what to say at this point, but I think this is ridiculous. We're going to show you how people may have changed over the years, particularly Kyle, how he feels about this whole third party strategy and ideology. And we're also going to get into Gabon Coup. Yes, you can see that gentleman there does not look happy. There is a reason for that. And we'll also finish on the Washington ballot initiatives that I know I continue to have put off. So we'll get into all of that. If you have not been paying attention, there has been another coup that has happened in Africa, this time in the country of Gabon. Now, it was just a couple weeks ago, we discussed the coup that happened in Niger, and we talked about how basically military group got together and decided to remove their current leader because the current leader was embracing neocolonialism. They were in bed basically with Macron, the leader of France, and that the people basically were being exploited because of the resources there. So France was taking uranium from countries like Niger, using it for their people in France. Meanwhile, people in Niger barely had power, right? Again, another country rich in resources, but the people are poor. Now we see a similar situation, but this time with the country Gabon. And so what I'm predicting is that what happened in Niger can actually spread across Africa, where more countries are starting to push back against Western imperialism and neocolonialism and telling these Western leaders, get your hands out of our country, get your hands off our resources, even if that means that we have to remove our own leaders, which has been basically approved by the West. That's why the people that are in those positions are there to begin with. If we have to remove our own leaders to get what we want for our people in our country, that is what we are going to do. And now we see the situation happening in Gabon, where they decided to do the similar situation that happened in Niger, where they decided to remove their leader and send a strong message to the West. Let's get into this clip here from One TV.
African nations are witnessing a spate of military coups. After Niger, it's now Gabon. A group of senior military officers announced seizing power and placing the president under house arrest, minutes after the presidential election results were out, giving Ali Bongo Ondimba a third term in power. The military takeover in Gabon was announced live on the television channel Gabon 24 by a group of Gabonese military officers. They claimed that Gabonese President Ali Bongo Ondimba was placed under house arrest and one of his sons has been arrested for treason. The officers claimed they represented all security and defense forces in the African nation. They rejected the election results, announcing closure of all borders until further notice. The group also announced that state institutions were dissolved with immediate effect. The military coup came just hours after the presidential election results were announced by the State Election Committee that declared President Ali Bongo Ondimba had won the election with 64% of the vote early on Wednesday morning. Within minutes of the announcement, loud sounds of gunfire could be heard in the center of the capital, Libreville.
So this is just another example where obviously the people in Gabon have basically said that, no, we didn't elect this leader. The person that you said has actually won. This is not who we chose, but that's who the West wants in charge of those countries. Now, why would the West do that? They want a leader in charge of these countries that is going to agree with Western imperialism. They're going to be okay with someone like Macron taking their resources. So oftentimes what you see in some of these countries in Africa, some of these leaders that are in those positions were actually propped up by Western countries like France or us here in the United States. And we've seen this happen all across the world. And now we are starting to see, along with the BRICS alliance that is continuing to expand, and other countries are joining BRICS as we speak, including an ally of the US like Saudi Arabia. And you also see other countries starting to rise up and push back against these Western powers. This is a turning point in this world when it comes to power. It's not just about Russia and China. It's also about the possibility and the idea that these countries can govern themselves, that these countries can lead themselves without any intervention from Western countries.
In a video appeal, deposed President Ali Bongo, who has been placed under house arrest, urged his supporters to rise up against the military coup in Gabon.
So you see here, you see what they did? So they basically painted over the new leader's face. And so the leader, the gentleman that they said is actually the winner, he's under house arrest. So he told the people to basically, no, push back against these results, push back against this. And that's what they did. So we'll have to see what happens. Les, I'm going to continue to play this, but we're going to have to see what happens after this. And I want to bring this up because it was just announced, and I'm going to talk to him next week. It was just announced recently that Imran Khan, his sentence has actually been suspended, his jail sentence. Now you look at someone like Imran Khan, again, they were trying to get him out. That was the US government that pushed Pakistani officials to remove Imran Khan and to put him in jail because, again, that's what the West wanted. The West wanted someone that was actually going to go along with this war in Ukraine. And Imran Khan chose to remain neutral and didn't want anything to do with it. So what do they do with those types of those leaders who choose to remain neutral? The West comes in and say, you got to go. What do they do with those leaders or with candidates that run and don't want to agree with imperialism? The West comes in and say, you're not going to be able to win. So essentially, these people don't have control over their own countries. So this is something that has to change. Now, I don't know if I'm 100% in favor of coups, so to speak. Those can end up deadly and dangerous to people as well. But at this point, I also don't know what to tell the people to do, because what else are they supposed to do in order to push back against this behavior that's coming from the West?
I'm Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of Gabon, and I'm to send a message to all the friends that we have all over the world to tell them to make noise, for the people here have arrested me and my family. My son is somewhere, my wife is in another place, and I'm at the residence. Right now, I'm in the residence. And nothing is happening. I don't know what's going on. So I'm calling you to make noise, really. I'm thanking you. Thank you.
Now, according to reports, every vote held in Gabon since the country's return to a multi-party system in 1990 has ended in violence. Clashes between government forces and protesters after the 2016 election killed several people. In anticipation of post-electoral violence, many people in the capital fled to other parts of the country or left Gabon altogether. Before polls closed last Saturday, Gabon's government had announced a nationwide curfew and cut off internet access. After the announcement of the coup, General Brice Oligui Nguema, head of the Presidential Guard of ousted President Ali Bongo Ondimba, was carried in triumph by hundreds of soldiers. The cries of Oligui, President. France, which has economic interests in Gabon, has condemned the coup, saying it is closely monitoring the situation. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne said that France is following events in Gabon with the greatest attention. France is a former colonial power in Gabon whose influence in Africa is seen as being undermined.
Let me think about what he just said. Think about what he just said here, guys. Watch this when he talks about France's colonial power. Listen to this.
French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne said that France is following events in Gabon with the greatest attention. France is a former colonial power in Gabon whose influence in Africa is seen as being undermined.
He says that France is a former colonial power in Gabon, and it says that their influence in Africa is being undermined. My question to that is, why are they allowed to influence Africa in the first place? This is something we need to think about. Who are they, including the prime minister, who are they to say what countries they can influence? Why isn't France just focusing on their self and their own people, right? Didn't you guys just have a pension reform protest that lasted for weeks? Aren't the people in France upset at the pension reforms? Aren't people upset with Macron? Shouldn't you focus on your own people and your own problems? But no, they're focusing on other countries like Gabon because they need the resources in those countries. It doesn't matter to them if the people there don't get to share their own resources. It doesn't matter to them if the people there are struggling, if the people there are poor, if the people there are starving. They're just trying to take what works best for them, not what works best for the people in Gabon. Let's continue. Even the name Gabon, that sounds French to me.
by a series of recent coups that have toppled friendly governments. Meanwhile, China says it is also monitoring the situation closely. Chinese spokesperson called on all sides in Gabon to resolve differences through dialogue and restore normal order as soon as possible. China has also called for the personal safety of deposed President Ali Bongo Ondimba.
When they talk about personal safety, hold on, this piece right here. When they get into China.
Dialogue and restore normal order as soon as
Restore normal order as soon as possible. Normal order according to who? Define normal. You see, the normal order that he's referring to, that definition is what China and France want to happen in Gabon. Think about this for a second. They want them to do what they tell them to do. That's their idea of normal order. Let's continue.
Possible. China has also called for the personal safety of deposed President Ali Bongo Ondimba. Ali Bongo Ondimba had visited Beijing in April and met with President Xi Jinping, who declared him an old friend of the Chinese people. Russia, too, has reacted to the developments, stating that it was concerned by the situation in Gabon and are closely following what is going on there.
They are concerned not just because there was a coup, but they are concerned because the people rose up. And if the people rise up and there's more of them, the people in Gabon, than there are of the military powers in these Western countries, then that means that the Western powers are losing their control over those countries, and that's what they don't want to happen.
Wilson Kembo is a political and security risk consultant from West Yorkshire, United Kingdom. Wilson, thank you very much for making time for us and welcome to We on Wild is One. Many thought that the Gabon elections is a done deal. President Ali Bongo portrayed a picture of carrying his family legacy forward. Many even thought it would be an obvious win for Bongo until the internet was cut. Then doubts started coming in. What might have infuriated the military for them to take this action?
Firstly, I have a feeling that the coup in Gabon is slightly different to what has happened in Guinea, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Because this coup, I have a feeling, while in the other countries, the military there have taken power so that they will stay in power. I have a feeling that this time around in Gabon, the military are actually trying to restore the constitutional democracy in the country, which they believe that has been manipulated by one family for over 6 decades.
So he's saying that he believes, in reference to this coup when compared to Niger, that the people actually want to restore I think he said the Constitution. Yeah, the Constitution that was there prior to this particular family. Now, listen to this. He's saying they've been manipulated. Excuse me, can't talk tonight. Manipulated by one family for over 6 decades. That's a political dynasty. That would be like if we had George Bush Sr. or George H.W. Bush, then George Bush, then Jeb Bush. Then any more Bushes left? Let me know. But you get the point, right? That would be like if we had Bill Clinton, then Hillary Clinton, then Chelsea Clinton, and then whoever else that's a Clinton. Why are political dynasties allowed to even exist? Think about this for a second. That can't be healthy. That can't be healthy for the people in the country at all. That's why part of the reason why they rose up. They're like, wait a minute now. We want new leadership. Why does it just continue to just slide through your family? That's something to think about. I have a big pet peeve about political dynasties.
Wilson, unlike Niger, like you mentioned there, Gabon is not part of ECOWAS. With that in mind, what regional body can save this tiny nation, and how much influence does France have over Gabon? Can they save the situation?
France, they just like Gabon, like the other countries, France over the years has been undermined by anti-colonial sentiments that have actually been manipulated by the politicians to curtail or to divert the blame for their failure to govern to the French. So for the other countries, there have actually been other foreign influences beyond France that have actually been in support of this coup. Especially Russia, there's a footprint, Russian footprint in most of the country, which is quite different to Gabon, because Gabon has got a completely different economic status, as well as the situation in Gabon was slightly different to the other countries, because Gabon economically is one of the well-off countries in the region.
So let's talk about that for a second, right? So you got to remember who he's there to represent. Remember, he's in the UK. Nico had a really good vid on this. Nico said France and the US have been extracting resources from Gabon for decades. 32% of the population lives in poverty, while the deposed president and his father, who ruled before him, have poverty worth tens of millions. Africa is done with neo-colonialism. So I want you to compare what Nico just said to what that gentleman just said. Remember, he's in the UK. He's representing the West. See how they use someone who has an African face, but he represents the West. So he's telling you, oh, it's this country is well off. But how are the people? How are the people? Let's listen to what Nico has to say. I thought he did a really good job with this video.
France is just having a horrible month as another one of their African puppets was just overthrown, this time in Gabon. That's right, earlier today, Ali Bongo was overthrown, and as you can see here, the people of Gabon are just all torn up about it. Now, of course, some of you may be wondering, why would the people of Gabon prefer a military junta as opposed to the quote-unquote democracy they may have had before? So Gabon is actually one of the largest exporters of oil in the world. And
boom, resources. I told you, they're there for resources. Oil. Let's go back again, because there's more. It's not just oil.
Gabon is actually one of the largest exporters of oil in the world. And 50% of that oil is exported to the United States. Gabon is also the fourth largest exporter of minerals on the planet. Two of those minerals being uranium, which we know France needs, especially given the coup in Niger and situation, and manganese, which has many applications.
So we have France stealing uranium from Niger and from Gabon. They're taking uranium from multiple countries at the same time. In that interview with that gentleman from the UK, this is not mentioned. See, this is the piece, guys. This is the piece. Manganese has many applications.
One of which is acting as a filler for batteries, which we know will be huge given this power struggle that we are seeing come about because of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So given those facts and the fact that France has at least 110 companies in Gabon, you think that the people of Gabon would be pretty well off, right? Well, at least the former president benefited from it, considering he had 70 bank accounts, 39 apartments, 2 Ferraris, 6 Benzes, 3 Porsches, and a Bugatti.
You see this? This is the problem. The unequal distribution of wealth. The president has all these cars. These aren't cheap cars. It's not like the president has like a Toyota and a Honda over here. Over 30 apartments and 70 bank accounts. Who has 70 bank accounts? They're corrupt. They're corrupt. And you wonder why the people are angry. But this is who the West wants in because it benefits them in reference to resources.
It's 42 years of ruling. And the president who is just overthrown is the son of the former president who has been ruling ever since. So I'm sure he's not too far removed from that life of luxury either. But as for the people of Gabon, well, there's about 2.3 million people living there. and 32% of them live in extreme poverty, surviving off of only roughly $5 a day.
Could you live off of $5 a day? Think about it now. $5 a day. Could you live off of that? How would you pay your rent? How would you pay your utility bill? You probably wouldn't be able to pay that utility bill. You probably would have no power. Unequal distribution of wealth,
which is absolutely unacceptable and ridiculous considering the insane amount of natural resources they have at their disposal. It's really starting to look like Africans are fed up with the West. You're either going to do business the right way, or they're going to oust your puppet, and they'll figure it out themselves. Either way, it looks like neocolonialism in Africa is dying, and I, for one, am absolutely here for it.
Bingo. Now, it wasn't always this way. When you look at someone like Macron actually at one point in time did not agree with neocolonialism, or at least that's what he said. I want to take you back to a time when he was running for office, when he said something different.
The age of France-Afrique is over. I'm not the one who's saying this. This is what Emmanuel Macron said in the month of March earlier this year as he began his 4-nation tour of Africa. For those who are not familiar, France-Afrique refers to the French sphere of influence in Africa. This was France's post-colonization strategy of propping up dictators in its erstwhile colonies, to set up military bases and to maintain its stranglehold on the resources of the nations of Central and West Africa, even though they'd become politically independent. What is interesting about Emmanuel Macron is this. He is the first French president to be born after the end of France's colonial rule in Africa. In 2017, when he was still campaigning for the top job, Emmanuel Macron had famously declared that colonialism is a crime against humanity.
You see that? You see how people change? You see how these politicians change? They talk a good game. So in the beginning, Macron said colonialism was a crime against humanity, but he seems to be fine with it now. People change when they get into office.
And once he was elected the president, during his visit to Burkina Faso in November 2017, Emmanuel Macron won himself a lot of fans when he said, and I quote him here, "I'm from a generation that does not come and tell Africa what to do."
I am from a generation that does not come and tell Africa what to do. But here he is telling Africa what to do. You see how people, they're all the same. It doesn't matter if it's a candidate in the United States or if it's a candidate in France. They all sell a good game when they're running for office, right? But once they're in, they continue doing what their predecessors did. This is why they trusted him. This is why people in Africa trusted him, because he said he was opposed to this. And yet here he is.
But the question is this: has France really stopped meddling in the affairs of the Western and Central African nations? Well, take the example of Niger, the nation with the most recent coup in Africa. On the 26th of July, when the pro-Western but democratically elected government of Mohamed Bazoum was ousted, Emmanuel Macron was quick to react. Macron was categorical in his statement that he would not tolerate any attack against France or its interests, and Paris would retaliate immediately and uncompromisingly. Now, France has got every right to defend its interests in any part of the globe that it wants. But the obvious question that springs up is this: what really are French interests that France wants to defend in Niger?
And we've answered that question already. That is resources, uranium, etc. I disagree with that statement where he said France has the right to defend their interests in whatever country they want. No, I disagree with that, because obviously that can be exaggerated. And then where are the limitations? If you think that you can defend your interests in whatever country you want, by what means? And what is the limit? So think about that, for example. But that's to show you how once upon a time, Macron didn't believe in this either, or said he didn't believe in it, but here he is practicing it. All of the Western allies, they're all together on this. And that's the thing. It's not just France. The US also had interest here as well in reference to the resources. So a lot of these countries that people refer to as third world countries, again, they are rich in resources that are exploited. These people are exploited. These people are paid very little. Like they told you, people there were making like $5 a day. The people there are struggling, and the Western countries are doing well, stealing their resources. We'll keep an eye on this one, just like Niger, but I don't think this will be the last one. I don't think this will be the last one. JB says they need the resources in Gabon, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger so the French can enjoy wealth that gives them the pensions that they're striking about. The French got it good off the backs of Africans. And this goes back to what we've said before, coming from Second Thought. Second Thought has said this on his channel multiple times, that a lot of times some of these countries that have these universal programs, they're actually exploiting people. They may not be exploiting their own people, but oftentimes that exploitation tends to happen in the global south. So this is something that we have to remember. Pete says he tells Africa what to do. He just doesn't come. There you go. Bingo. Marvin says you can defend what you stole. Shout out to Kit from Hardlands. Welcome, Kit. And Top JJ, imagine French interests in the U.S. Right. Imagine. So one other thing I want to add, the name Gabon comes from the Portuguese word gabao, meaning cloak. Early explorers thought the estuary of the Como River by the capital of Libreville was the shape of a cloak. So there you go. Thank you so much for that, Eric. Ding, ding, ding. All right, we are moving on to our next story here. You guys will have to excuse my voice tonight. I am a little stuffy. I do have a cold. We're moving on to our next story here, which is about Tucker Carlson. Now, ever since Tucker Carlson has left Fox News, he has been willing to talk a lot. He's been willing to reveal things about the media, not just Fox News, but all of it. What he saw when he was a part of mainstream media and why he feels the rest of us should be concerned. Now, this is not to cheerlead for Tucker Carlson, but it is to show you what we need to know is happening with mainstream media and what we need to know in reference to who is controlling the narrative, where the narrative comes from, and who is supposed to receive that narrative, and what happens if you don't follow that playbook. I want to start with this first clip. He had an interview with Adam Carolla. I don't know if you guys know who he is. I knew Adam Carolla from this show that used to come on MTV called Loveline. It was back in the day. And he used to host that show with Dr. Drew, of all people. Like, now thinking back on this, I'm like, whoa, this is so different. Because I never knew these guys were political for the longest time. I just knew them from that show Loveline, where people would call in or they would appear in the audience on the TV show and they would ask Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla for relationship advice or advice about sex. Okay. Advice about sex. So when I did find out eventually that they are very much, into politics as well, I was kind of surprised. I'm like, the Loveline guys? So yeah. Anywho, let's get into this first clip here in this interview where Tucker Carlson is revealing something about Barack Obama that happened during his presidency that he says mainstream media was basically warned that they could not cover or report this story. Listen to this. I told you, they're everywhere. They control everything.
So why? But I did go along with things I was uncomfortable with. I didn't ask difficult enough questions, and I wound up supporting something that was really bad for the United States and evil, in my opinion. So why did I do that? Part of it was I was young and stupid. Part of it was, I think, if I'm being honest, this was not conscious, but it's still true. I felt vulnerable. I had at the time 3 kids. I've got a mortgage. Like, do you really want to pick a fight with everybody when you're 31 and you're just trying to like pay tuition and keep your shit together? Maybe you don't. And I think it's an age thing to a certain extent. Like at a certain age, whatever it is, if you're in the same business and you feel like you've sort of done what you set out to do, you're like, I don't really need to impress anybody at this point. I'm not, in debt. Speaking for myself, I'm not rich. I will never be rich. I'm pretty sure of that. But I'm not in hock to anybody. I don't owe anybody anything. And my kids are grown. So it's like, why would I ever lie? I'm just in a different place. And so you can't, it's not that I lied intentionally before. I mean it. I didn't. I never have been in favor of lying. However, I think I did not allow myself to think certain things because they were just too counter narrative. They were like, everybody I knew, the world I lived in Northwest DC, like everyone works either directly for the government or is a parasite on government effectively, including people I love and know.
Let me pause here for just a second. There's two things I want to say. Number one, where he says not being rich. I don't have access to Tucker Carlson's finances, but from what I understand, isn't he a part of the Swanson family? So I would assume he may not consider himself being rich, but the rest of us do, damn it. Okay, the rest of us do. And two, this point that he makes here about everybody in DC either works for the government or they may work for another party that is still affiliated with the government. That shit's true. Because when I graduated from college, a lot of my friends got jobs in DC. So DC is one of the cities that it's not uncommon for college graduates to move to if they're not already in the area, is because there are a lot of jobs, entry-level positions for college graduates where all they require from you is that you have a bachelor's degree. You don't necessarily have to have experience in the field. They're going to train you. Problem is, just about almost all of those jobs are either working with the federal government or you're working for a company or a think tank that is still attached to the federal government. So a lot of my friends, like they worked for the VA, they may have worked within Congress, but not in like this important role where you would know who they are, what their name is, like, right? Like they weren't like a staffer for someone, but they had a lower level job. So I think a lot of times when people think about like DC jobs, they're thinking about, oh, they must work for Congress or they must work in the White House. No, like all the federal jobs that exist in DC, whether it's even working for the DOJ or working for the Department of Transportation, like there's different ones that you can work for, but a lot of times you're working for the federal government. So that is true. Now, that being said, what does that mean? If you are in mainstream media in the DC area, it means that obviously your narrative is going to be controlled by the federal government. So you are essentially surrounded by a lot of people that live in like this DC bubble, and this is all they know. This is all they see. Again, if most of the people are working for the federal government, do you think they're going to allow Fox News or CNN News or the rest of them to paint a narrative about the federal government that is negative? Let's continue.
Really well. And the media is too, by the way. I mean, the media is reporting on government, but it's also dependent on government. In 2008, it became really clear that Barack Obama had been having sex with men and smoking crack. And a guy came forward, Larry Sinclair, and said, I'll sign an affidavit. And he did. I'll take a lie detector. And he did.
Now, I just want to say this piece here about Barack Obama. I don't care who Barack Obama sleeps with. I don't care who he has a relationship with. That's really none of my business. I don't care what his sexuality is. That's not the problem, though. I don't even care. He says Barack Obama was doing drugs, paraphernalia. I got to say carefully here on YouTube. Again, I really don't care. I think that drugs should be legal anyway. I think all drugs should be legal, and it's up for the people to decide if that's what they want to use or what they want to do. I think it all should be legal and it all should be regulated, and then the government can actually tax it. That's just me. I also think that would actually decrease the crime rate. And I saw that happen in reference to Portugal, when they legalized all drugs. But again, making it clear, I don't care about his sexuality. I don't care who he's having a relationship with. I don't care if he did drugs. That's not the problem. Here's the problem.
I smoked crack with Barack Obama and had sex with him. Well, that was obviously true. Nobody reported it, not because they were squeamish about sex or drugs, but because the Obama campaign said anyone who reports on this gets no access to the Obama campaign.
That's the problem. That's the problem. So obviously, if you work in mainstream media, you're not going to report on it because your network is not going to have, by the way, not just that reporter, your network will lose access to the Obama campaign. And obviously, you're going to have to report on them at some point in time, especially if they're president of the United States. That's the problem, people. It's not who he slept with. It's not what type of drugs he may or may not have been using. That's not the issue. The issue is the fact that they are controlling the narrative for mainstream media, telling them what they can and cannot cover. Now, if you're a journalist or you consider yourself to be a journalist and you hit the pavement, you go out and get the beat and get the story, imagine coming back and them saying, well, yeah, you can't cover this because it's damning information about the president that we don't want people to know. And if you do, you'll just lose access. Is that true journalism? And this is why more people have moved away to independent media because of that. So you have the government not only controlling what people can say on social media platforms like Twitter, for example, but also what mainstream media can say on these networks. It's all controlled. Now, last time I checked, when I was in elementary school, we learned about freedom of press. And we learned about freedom of speech. And I really believe that. But as I've gotten older, I've come to realize, do we really have free speech in this country? Do we really have freedom of press in this country? I don't think we do. Now let's continue.
And so they didn't report on it. So that happens. That's just one small example, but that happens all the time with lots of different issues.
Now,
And
do you believe that transpired, or do you believe the guy is legitimate, or both?
Oh, the Larry Sinclair story? Oh, that definitely happened. Oh, for sure. I mean, I've talked to Larry Sinclair about it, and definitely it happened. I mean, Larry Sinclair's been in and out of prison during one period. I mean, 40 years ago, he was in and out of prison. He's got a criminal record by definition. He's, poor. He's got a disordered life. He's missing a tooth. Like, he's not, an Atlantic fellow.
He is not what mainstream media would appear or would consider to be credible. In so many words, that's what Tucker Carlson is trying to say. And it's true. And it's disgusting, but it's true. If they see that he's poor, they see that you got a record. That's a big one. You got a record. And they see that you got a record. They see that you're poor. They see that you're missing teeth. You are no longer considered to be credible. And that is a shame, but that's how mainstream media works. And they used that against him. I'll show you this. We'll come back to the video. They used this against Larry Sinclair. Politico did a hit piece. Obama accuser has a long rap sheet. You see, there it is right there. So they show that he was wanted. They show that he was arrested. It says Sinclair is familiar to political junkies and reporters as the source of outlandish allegations about Senator Barack Obama, tales that begin with sex and drugs and moved on to murder. So it goes on to say here, the Duluth, Minnesota resident is the sort of figure who appears at the margins of every presidential campaign. Both President George W. Bush and Bill Clinton had their own obscure accusers with dramatic allegations. But as the old media ignores him, Sinclair has taken full advantage of the internet and a video which he makes his claims that have been viewed more than 900,000 times on YouTube. And so it goes on to say Sinclair's biography, though, may get in the way of that pitch. Public records and court filings reveals that he has a 27-year criminal record with a specialty in crimes involving deceit. So this is what they do, right? So if it's a narrative, it's a story that they don't want the people to hear, what do? They come out and they attack their character. So then it's not believed.
Going to the Aspen Ideas Festival, I think he has a record of deception. Obviously he does. But this story, if you listen to it in detail, is clearly true. I mean, I'm going to do an interview with him and you can hear it. And again, it's not going to change the world that Barack Obama likes dudes. I think this was well known. Barack Obama said so himself in a letter to his girlfriend. And by the way, that's kind of Barack Obama's business. I'm not attacking him for liking dudes. I'm just saying the amount of lying in the media about it was unbelievable. Like, people knew this was true, and it was quite obviously true at the time. And people who covered the campaign didn't say anything about it because they didn't want to lose access to the campaign. And that happens all the time up and down government. So it's almost like if you have a housekeeper, you think, oh, she works for me. But if you have a housekeeper long enough, you realize, well, you actually work for her, and you get caught up in her dramas. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's a weird dynamic where you switch places with people.
And by the way,
so I just want to point out something here in reference to who you work for, right? So if you think about it, for example, like, even if that story, if they were allowed to report that story and that story did come out, so what? Who cares? Like, that's the part to me that just, it doesn't make any sense. Does it really matter who someone is with and who they're not with? Who cares? Like, who cares? But again, they wanted to paint this image of Barack Obama, right? Being this family man, the perfect image that they wanted for the Democratic Party, a Democrat candidate. And that would hurt the image that they had planned for Barack Obama. That's what that's really about. But who do they work for? All these people in the media, who are they really working for? Is it the government? Is it the CIA? Is it the FBI? Who controls the narrative? We're going to go to this next clip here in the interview. And this one is in reference to the CIA and what they do in reference to mainstream media. Listen to this.
I mean, I've heard that clip 1,000 times. Every time it renders me speechless. That's the end of democracy. And I don't know how you can, in the same sentence, say, I'm for democracy, and then say, actually, our country is run by a shadowy intel agency no one elected and no one has oversight over.
We don't have real democracy, but whatevs. We don't have real democracy, but I understand what he's saying in reference to shadow organizations. So let me go ahead and continue here.
I mean, it's not a democratic republic if the CIA can punish you as an elected president for doing things that they don't like. They're your employees. Speaking of the housekeeper taking over the house, they're like your housekeeper. Shut up and make the bed. Like, the point of the CIA, as originally conceived, was to inform the president of what's going on around the world so he can make better foreign policy decisions. So the intel gathering apparatus of the U.S. president, they work for him. They have no constitutional legitimacy outside of him.
But the president in turn, and this is the point he's trying to make with the housekeeper analogy, but the president in turn actually also works for the CIA. Who is running things? Even right now, when you look at Joe Biden, and obviously you hear Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, obviously all three of these politicians are not at their best when it comes to their cognitive abilities right now. Who is making the decisions, people? Who's making the decisions for Dianne Feinstein? Are people just telling her how to vote? Who's making the decisions for Mitch McConnell right now? Mitch McConnell froze again. Are people just telling him how to vote? Who is making the decisions for the president of the United States? Let's continue.
Our system's super simple. The people who are elected by the public have all the power. They have employees to whom they delegate that power to get things done. But those employees have no independent power at all and no independent legitimacy. The CIA is a totally illegitimate criminal organization unless it is following precisely the orders of the elected president. Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter. So he's describing a crime. The people committing that crime in CIA should be in prison for long terms. That's the great threat to democracy right there. And the fact that no one on that set could even see that tells you how deeply corrupted they are. That's terrifying. And it's true, I happen to know. And I could bore you for hours, again, since I spent my life there and know a lot of people who work there. But the bottom line is there's no oversight at all. They were able to participate in the murder of a U.S. president and then hide that fact for 60 years by keeping those documents classified, which they still are. It's unbelievable. And it's happening in front of all of us, and nobody seems to care. But, you know, as the country declines and the democratic institutions weaken, and you wonder, how did this happen? Well, that's how it happened, right there.
What do you think?
And we'll just pause here for just a second. Very interesting conversation. I can't play, like, there's some parts of the video, the interview, I can't play on here because YouTube is ridiculous. But if you have time, I think you should watch this interview. I don't even watch Adam Carolla's show. This was sent to me by someone, and I was like, oh, this interview is actually pretty interesting, to definitely check this out as well. But I think we need to start asking these questions, like, why are people afraid to cover certain stories? Why are certain journalists put on kill lists, so to speak, right? Mainstream media, the CIA, and the president of the United States. I feel like all these items are connected. I feel like mainstream media is controlled by these government organizations. I feel like basically the State Department, I feel like they control mainstream media, and the shareholders like BlackRock and Vanguard also control the media. You don't invest in a network, millions of dollars in a network, and you're not getting something out of it in return. So that's something to think about. And if all those things are controlled by these government agencies like the FBI or the CIA, you want to talk about the CIA? Did you guys know one of the things that the CIA has done before in the past? I'm not sure if they're still doing this now, but this was actually admitted in an interview with an ex-CIA officer. This was back in the late 70s. Nick showed this one time on RBN. Did you guys know that the CIA also infiltrates the newspapers? Back then, they infiltrated them and told them which stories they could and could not run. So if they were controlling the media, they are controlling the narrative. And then they would be the reason why a lot of people in this country are half asleep. That's very dangerous. This is why something like free speech is so incredibly important. Let's continue. I have one more clip. I think they stopped here.
The future holds. Is it?
I don't know.
I mean, are they going to let Trump be president?
No, of course. I mean, look, if, they protested him, they called him names. He won anyway. They impeached him twice on ridiculous pretenses. They fabricated a lot about what happened on January 6th in order to impeach him again. It didn't work. He came back. Then they indicted him. It didn't work. He became more popular. Then they indicted him 3 more times. And every single time his popularity rose. So if you begin with criticism, then you go to protest, then you go to impeachment, now you go to indictment, and none of them work, what's next? I mean, graph it out, man. We're speeding toward assassination, obviously. And
do you guys think they would go that far? If you're new, don't forget to smash that like button, guys. That helps me with the algorithm. Do you think they would go that far in reference to Donald Trump? Or do you think they would find a way to get rid of Donald Trump? I don't think they will. I think Trump knows a lot of powerful people, so I don't think they'll go that far. But if they prevent, I really believe this, if they prevent Donald Trump from running for president in 2024, I think a lot of people in this country are going to be really angry. I don't support Trump, but I think a lot of people in this country will be really angry. Some of you are saying yes. Some of you are saying maybe, possible. Aaron says 100%. Interesting. Let's continue a little bit more and we'll go to the third clip.
No one will say that, but I don't know how you can reach that conclusion. You know what I mean? Like, they have decided, permanent Washington, both parties have decided that there's something about Trump that's so threatening to them, they just can't have him.
Did you guys hear that part? Both parties have decided. See how they can come together for some type of bipartisanship when it's something that's in their favor, when they're looking at the status quo. Both parties have decided that they do not want Donald Trump to continue this presidential race. I really do believe, and I've said this before, I really do believe that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, I believe behind closed doors, they working together in reference to deciding what is going to happen in American politics and maintaining the status quo. Some of these people go to the same country club, you guys, same country club that you can't even get into. Think about it. I think when it comes to the status quo, they work together just fine. Anything to keep the poor's poor and to keep the workers working until you don't need them anymore.
They're putting him on trial in March of next year in the J6 case, which basically consists of trying to send him to prison for the rest of his life for complaining about the last election. That's literally what it is. Again, if this were happening in Moldova, the State Department would issue an all-hands-on-deck order to let the world know this is not a legitimate government. And yet our government is doing it. It's like it's really hard to overstate how bad this is. And I don't know where it's going, but there's a collision that's clearly imminent. And by the way, the president is senile in a way that's impossible to deny. Biden's not running the government, so like, I don't know, man. I've never been this worried about anything as I am about where this is going.
Well, okay. And then we're going to go to the third clip and see what's really interesting. What he just said there. That's why he's not on Fox News anymore. That's exactly why. They would never let him say that on Fox News. Think about it. So this last piece here that I want to show you is Tucker referring to the media reading State Department talking points. Again, he has firsthand experience of this. So let's go ahead and get into this piece here.
Leave the nest and go independent and be so wildly successful. Really, it bolsters my theory of when you're good and you have something to say, then you can go independent. And so when you broke off and you got let go and Don Lemon got let go at the same time, and all the entertainment shows were like Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon, sort of both looked at as the face of these competing networks, Fox and CNN, both gone. What's the future hold? I just said no future for Don Lemon because he has nothing to say. He says what CNN says, and big future for Tucker because he's independent. He's a clear thinker, and he's a very clear voice, and people will find him. And I feel that there's a kind of meritocracy that is a field leveling that I'm really thankful for. I'm really thankful that guys like you are going to find a huge audience outside of Fox, and I don't think Don Lemon will.
I don't know. I mean,
where is Don Lemon? Before I saw this interview, I'm not going to lie. I know I recovered it when Don Lemon was fired, but then somewhere along the way, I forgot about Don Lemon. And so where is Don Lemon today? I haven't heard any new news about him, but that's interesting.
I've been fired a number of times, and every time I've been so grateful for it. I do think it changes you in a good way. Success is terrible for men, as you know, having been successful. The more successful you are, the more arrogant and stupid you get. And I don't know. I mean, I texted Don. We got fired the same day, and I texted him immediately, and I was like, "Congrats, man! This will be great." And then I'm kind of rooting for Don Lemon. I don't know, Don Lemon. But in general, I do think I know a lot of not very talented people in television, but I know some talented people in TV who are still there, and a couple of them I've talked to, and it's pretty nice out here. You should come. Part of the way those TV companies work, they're all the same in this regard, is they tell the on-air talent, like, you're a loser, you're nothing without us. They really get inside your head. I'm sure the movie business is the same way. And this is to lower the cost of talent. And they just constantly tell you how bad you are. No one ever says a good word to you. And I mean, I never had that because I refused to talk to anybody in management for many, many years. I never talked to.
Good call. When he said he refused to talk to anyone in management for many years, good call. Avoid management as much as possible. Any job. If you don't have to communicate with them, don't. Because even when you think you're just chit-chatting with them and it's just a little chat or conversation, they watching you. And they're wondering, what is she talking about? Oh, so she went out last weekend. Is that why she was late to work the next day? Yeah, avoid them. Avoid them. But I do want to say this piece here where he said that they get inside your head, especially those that are, lower level or whatever, making you feel like that you may not be great enough. I actually saw that in undergrad. So I majored in broadcast journalism and English, right? What I noticed in one of my classes, it was the announcing class. In one of my classes, our professor, yes, he hosts the evening news. Yes, he made a big deal out of it. Yes, he had ego. Let's just go ahead and cut to the chase there. He told, I don't think you can do this today. He told one of my classmates that there was no way that she was going to be a TV anchor because of the way that she looked. It's like, some of the things that were said to us, those of us that are millennials, some of the things that we heard, like when we were in school, like you really can't say these things today. And it wasn't even one of those things like for those of us that were classmates, there were only 15 people in this class. That was one of the smaller classes. For those of us that were classmates, it's like it was obvious what he was saying about her. Everybody knew that he was talking about her weight. And that wasn't cool. And I remember her trying her hardest to please him. The guy was an ass. I'm just going to be honest. She tried her hardest to please him and to prove him wrong. And he was so hard on her. And it was so disturbing. And I think, me being so young at the time, like I didn't have the type of passion and gusto that I have now. But if I could go back to younger me, I really wish I would have said something to stand up for her in that class. None of us did. After class, we'd talk. When we'd go to lunch, we'd all say, God, you heard what he said to her? That's ridiculous. Da, da, da. But during class, all of us were afraid. Because the thing is, we were afraid that if we stood up for her, then we would become the new target. And what that professor did was wrong. But the thing is, in the media space, especially mainstream media, what Tucker Carlson is saying there is true, especially certain networks. When you get to the point where like you're on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, that kind of thing, like they can tear you down and tear you apart. And like he said, they do that to keep the labor costs low, because that's the thing. Anybody else was ready and standing in line and ready to take your place if you don't want it. And they know that. So disturbing. I wonder what happened to him. Let me go on.
But most anchors do, and they just feel so bad about themselves and so insecure that like they're afraid to go anywhere. Like I need this stupid company filled with layers of dumb people making bad programming decisions in order to do my work. I mean, they really think that. So it's sad. I'm thinking of one person in particular who's like a legit old friend of mine who works at a big TV channel, and he's famous, quite famous, but they mistreat the hell out of him. And I'm always saying to him, no one's creative in your world. Like, you don't work with any creative people. They're all bureaucrats and functionaries. You are creative. You should leave. If you take a pay cut the first couple of years, no big deal. You'll be happy because you can do your thing. You can make your art, without someone in your face all the time. But he's been so brainwashed that he won't go. It's sad. Ugh.
All of those people on those networks like CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, all those people could leave those networks today and just start a YouTube channel or Rumble channel. And the thing is, their followers will follow them for the most part because they already have an audience. So if you already have an audience, all you got to do is to tell them to follow you, just like Tucker Carlson did. Something to think about there. Interesting that people are so afraid.
What's your take on a Wolf Blitzer type? Because whenever I
take a close look at his history. Actually,
I'm always like, why would he do
interesting.
this? Why would he say a bunch of stuff he doesn't believe or he must know is untrue? Like what? He sat there as this sort of elder statesman of news and just sort of lied right through COVID and many other subjects. Why would he do that? Why would he do it to his legacy?
I worked with Wolf for years, never had a problem with him. It was always nice. That no one wants to hear it. I'm sure most people won't believe it, but I can tell you, having lived it for many years, it's true. The intel agencies have a big effect on what is broadcast on television and what you see on Facebook and Google as well. I mean, they're all up and down Facebook and Google, as I'm sure.
Let's pause here for just a second. Facebook and Google. Have you noticed if you Google certain things, at least on that first page, there are certain websites that will appear on page 1, and there are certain websites that are never on page 1. Who makes that decision? Think about it. What they do is they suppress information, whether it's not just YouTube, but Google as well. They suppress information that they don't really want the masses to see. So it may still be there, but how many Google pages are you going to have to go through to find it, what you're looking for? This is where something like DuckDuckGo became useful, right? But then DuckDuckGo also got compromised. So this is what they do. So if you want to rank high on Google, number one, it needs to be information that those government agencies actually find to be acceptable. And number two, some people pay to rank high on Google. Something to think about. Let him continue.
And, there are a lot of anchors who, including people I know well and have worked with at different networks. I'm thinking of one in particular, a national security reporter who was just a mouthpiece for the Pentagon and the CIA and is knowingly telling lies on their behalf. That's very, very common, very common. And I can think of a number of people at CNN who I know for a fact are doing that exact thing. And so, they're reading government propaganda from the intel agencies knowingly. And I'm sure they've got some internal rationale that allows them to get up in the morning and face themselves despite having done something that's dishonest. But I'm just telling you, bottom line, I know that is true. I'm not speculating at all.
Okay. So one of the questions that you guys had before was, do they know do they believe the propaganda that they're actually selling the American people, or do they know that what they're saying is BS? According to Tucker Carlson, they know. How can you keep that job? Do you think people they become comfortable with the benefits that they receive with that job? They get comfortable with the prestige, getting to have their makeup done every day. Someone does their makeup for them. They can have a car come pick them up and take them to the studio at work. Do you think they get comfortable with that? And they don't want to leave that life behind? Because you can leave. You can leave. Like Tucker Carlson has his own thing on Twitter. Any of those people can leave and just start their, hey guys, I'm starting my own YouTube thing. Follow me over there and follow me on Rumble. They can leave. But so many choose to stay. Something to think about. Interesting discussion there. If you want to see the full conversation, again, that is on Adam Carolla's channel. It's called Tucker Carlson on his interview with Trump, Fox firing and America's future. First time I ever watched something from Adam Carolla, but I thought that was an interesting discussion. So thank you to who sent that to me. I can't remember. Let's go to some of the comments here. Lorez says, whoa, Loveline, Adam Carolla flashbacks. I know, MTV, man. Steve Wolfbrand says Loveline was great. JB says, I remember Adam Carolla from The Man Show. The Man Show! He hosted with Jimmy Kimmel. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Afro Rican 82. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Carlson has a net worth of 30 million. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He rich. Thank you for the super sticker, Robert. Thank you, Steve. Sabby, what about the daughters stolen from Africa to make a fake family? Do you not care about that either? I don't know what you're referring to. I think, Eric, Eric said something about the theory about Obama's daughters. I'd have to look into that. I don't know about that. Thank you, Jay. Tucker said in this interview, there will be a hot war between the U.S. and Russia within the next year. Do you agree with his opinion? I wouldn't put it past if Joe Biden is reelected, I would not put it past our government in reference to that happening. Wouldn't put it past it. Interesting. Oh, so you saw the interview. Thank you, George. Epstein was all about using kitty snatch for deep state control. Thank you, Steve. Sabby, Joan Rivers knew the truth about the Obamas. She was killed to silence her. I thought Joan Rivers had a heart attack or something, but interesting. Allegedly, for YouTube purposes, allegedly. Let's take that comment on Rockfin and we'll go to the next story. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. JFK. Corporations panicking. Oh no, no more cheap labor. We might have to bring manufacturing jobs back to American communities. What will we do? I'll tell you what you do. Transfer ownership to your workers. Worker co-ops focus on sustainability, not how fast and how big he can grow. We have resources here in America we can use. That is true, Roger. And thank you, Hemp Carr. Obama administration from 2012. U.S. Army teams will be deploying to as many as 35 African countries early next year for training programs and other operations as part of an increased Pentagon role in Africa. Interesting. That's from Democracy Now! And thank you for this tip as well, Roger. CIA, huh? Told you Truman was the worst president. Jimmy got Tucker to think outside partisan box. Now who is going to get him to rethink his racial views? Yep, Sab, John Stockwell, the church committee brought this all out with the CIA and our media in the wake of Nixon's inevitable impeachment. According to Hedges, they were becoming even more constrained until they found an opening with September 11th. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. We are going on to our next story. This is in reference to Max Blumenthal. So I don't know if everyone's aware, but apparently the Grayzone had ran into an issue with GoFundMe. So this whole situation is giving me pause because I use GoFundMe for mutual aid. So that's actually how we paid for the barbecue, the community barbecue that we did. So I may have to switch to something else. I may have to switch to something else for the next mutual aid event. But what happened to the Grayzone in reference to GoFundMe, it wasn't even a matter of GoFundMe not allowing them to receive donations. It was a matter of they had donations and GoFundMe would not let them cash out. So, this is one of those moments, there's Sabrina and there's Sabby. This is one of those moments where I think Sabrina would have came out. And Sabrina's a little bit different than Sabby. And Sabrina would have came out and said, give me my damn money. Like, seriously, I would have lost it because they raised thousands of dollars and they were doing this fundraiser, not just to keep the Grayzone going, but also because they did want to hire two of their contributing journalists, Wyatt Reed and Alex Rubenstein. They wanted to hire them on full time. So that's why they were trying to raise this money. At one point, I saw it, they had raised over $90,000. Could you imagine? Listen, I am a nice person, and you guys see me get riled up a little bit of time. I get passionate sometimes on this show and I let it out. But if I had $90,000 that I needed that money to pay people and GoFundMe cut off my access to get that money, you would have seen Sabrina 2.0 come out, and she has not been unleashed in a couple of years. But Max Blumenthal did explain this in a little bit more detail. He was actually on Glenn Greenwald's show, which Glenn Greenwald's been getting a lot of play this past week. He was on Glenn Greenwald's show System Update to talk about what happened. And then I actually have some good news in reference to the Grayzone's GoFundMe issue. Let's get into it.
So we are now going to bring in the founding editor and reporter, Max Blumenthal, who has done a lot of great investigative journalism reporting over the years, and whose site Grayzone is one that I use frequently, even though I don't always agree with it. Like, I'm sure Max doesn't always agree with my journalism either, but it's one of the most reliable sites, in my view, for getting good, critically minded, independent reporting about U.S. foreign policy. I'm grateful the Grayzone exists, and I'm very appreciative, Max, for you taking the time to join us tonight on System Update. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for supporting us here, and thanks for using our site. We don't have a warning label yet, but
yeah, well, you need one because you are apparently very dangerous. You are making the world unsafe for all kinds of people in ways that it's even too dangerous for these sites to explain how you're unsafe. That's how dangerous you are. So let's first of all talk about how you've been using GoFundMe before you got this shutdown notice. What is it that you've been using GoFundMe to do?
Well, this was the first time we ever used GoFundMe. We were advised not to, but I thought maybe I was naive. We wanted to fundraise to provide basically a stable future for 3 journalists that I've been working with for a long time, who I think are 3 of the best young investigative reporters out there, and who've been supplying us with so much journalistic content. Kit Clarenberg, Wyatt Reed, and Alex Rubinstein.
So Alex Rubinstein has been on this show before. Wyatt Reed has been on RBN. I think Kit may have also been on RBN. Anyway, we've spoken to all of these journalists. Wyatt Reed was at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I got to speak to him in person. He's actually on the stream there towards the end of the stream. We're walking and talking and stuff like that. They do really great work. You can find their articles, obviously, on the Grayzone. And yeah, that money was for them. That's why this is crazy.
And people were enthusiastic about this fundraiser. None of it was going to go to me. This is just a way for our audience to directly support the future of the kind of journalism that they really care about. And after over 1,100 donations, really showcasing so much grassroots support, hundreds of enthusiastic messages, and raising over $90,000, I received a message from someone named Sabrina, who could have been in a call center, who knows where.
Not me. Not me. I'm sorry. Someone DM'd me the other night. I think it was last night. Someone DM'd me and said, "Are you the Sabrina?" No, not me. I don't work for GoFundMe. There are many more Sabrinas. Let's go back.
From the ironically named Trust and Safety team of GoFundMe. And they told me that due to some external concerns, those are Sabrina's exact words, our funds had been frozen, and they would let me know as soon as possible what was going to happen. We'll keep you updated. And they didn't keep me updated. There was no response, no due process. I had no idea who I was talking to. 9 days later, or 8 days later, I just decided to call it quits. I mean, it wasn't fair to our donors that they didn't even know that their money was not even being transferred to us. It was being held up. And the history that you just provided of GoFundMe shows how shady this organization is. They actually tried to take the money, like to commit a warrantless seizure of the money of the donors to the Canadian Freedom Convoy.
Isn't that criminal? Like, for GoFundMe to take that money where people donated that money for a particular cause. So if I'm donating $100, I'm donating to this particular cause, and that's where I want that money to go. For GoFundMe to take my money, my donation, and use it for something else, isn't that criminal? I might have to read some of the some of the legal terms around these apps like GoFundMe. Really, because I would be upset if I donated my money to one thing and they decided to use it, not the Grayzone, but GoFundMe decided to use it for something else.
Donate that money to, in their words, established charities instead of the truckers.
Right. People donated
And
their money to a specific cause that they supported, and GoFundMe was going to take that money and give it to some other charity not requested by those people, steal their money and give it to some other group, whether that group was supported by the people donating or not. That is theft.
Yep. They were going to steal the money, that 10 million Canadian dollars, steal the money and just give it to some other charities. I mean, this is unheard of. And it was only thanks to actually U.S. lawmakers, Republican governors and Republican senators threatening GoFundMe, which is a U.S.-based, Silicon Valley-based company, that they relinquished the money and gave it back to its rightful owners. And so our fear was that that could happen again. So we said, hell no. We put out an article and a bulletin, an email blast to everyone telling them, demand a refund and go to a new fundraising page that we have set up at a trustworthy site called Spot Fund, where we've actually been in touch with the co-founder who said that they are 100% behind us and they're willing to transfer the money. They seem to be keeping their word. And so, yeah, I mean, thanks to everyone at Spot Fund for providing a trustworthy alternative to GoFundMe. And this goes to the question of who is behind this campaign, who represents the so-called external concerns.
Well, before we get into,
oh no, I meant to pause it. And Eric, can you get it back to? I think we had started at 40. Or never mind. I think I see it. All right, I'll get it back there. Okay, let me say something really quick. Let me see where I'm at. Hold on.
Of that law against journalists in the future.
No, we were further.
I thought it was so important that in order to retaliate against these attacks on a independent media, to do that.
Hold on.
Ukrainian warriors who continued. And
no, we were for that.
When we went to at the invitation of Patty Cosgrove, who's this.
Hold on, sorry.
As of virtually every establishment, Maven. Now, Max.
We'll pause there. Okay, let me say something really quick. There's something I wanted to tell you guys. I'm just thinking about something that I didn't think about when I chose this story. Do you guys remember when we covered a couple of weeks ago that there was the journalist on Twitter that thought he was calling out Max and Aaron because he said that Roger Waters donated $30,000 to the Grayzone? Do you guys remember when we covered that story? Okay, so that was GoFundMe, right? So on GoFundMe, you can see donations, like you can see who donated what and that kind of thing, right? Do you guys think that it's a little bit odd that here we are, not even a couple of weeks after that story broke where this guy was trying to smear the Grayzone because they got that giant donation from Roger Waters? Do you think it's kind of strange that now GoFundMe chooses to hold the funds? Let that marinate. Think about that for a second. Think about it. I find it to be a little bit odd. It could just be a coincidence. Let's go back in. Let me make sure I'm at the right spot because I know Glenn came in. Okay.
Let's go ahead and tell that story.
So this disinformation huckster named Caroline Orbueno raised a bunch of money on GoFundMe. I'm going to pull it up right now to see how much she raised. Thousands of dollars to investigate Tulsi Gabbard's links to Bashar al-Assad and Vladimir Putin at a time when Tulsi was under attack by the Democrats because she was the only anti-war candidate or moderately anti-war candidate. And what was Caroline Orbueno going to do? She was going to go to Hawaii to investigate those links. She never produced anything. She never turned anything up. So she basically fundraised for a Hawaiian vacation under the shadiest auspices possible, spreading disinformation in the process. And her fundraiser's still up at GoFundMe.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And this was...
Again, so that makes me think that they were reported. That makes me think that somebody, and I don't think it was probably just one, it was probably multiple people reported the Grayzone because they saw the amount of money that they were raising. And that's why when I saw that smear on Twitter, I was like, what are they trying to accomplish here? Right? Like the people who were smearing them. And that makes me wonder, did people report them because they saw they were raising that amount of money? People are so vindictive, you guys. You'd be surprised what people would do. I'm serious. You'd be surprised. So when GoFundMe says because of external circumstance, what external circumstances? What is the external issue? Is it the stories that the Grayzone covers? Is it because they don't parrot talking points from the State Department? Is that the external issue? Because this isn't the first time that something like this has happened. Last year, we talked about numerous people that were removed from PayPal, banned from Venmo. How you ban people from Venmo? Banned from Cash App, banned from GoFundMe because of the narrative that they have with their news. And so now you see it's happening also to the Grayzone. Whether you agree with these people or not, Jackson Hinkle got kicked off multiple Cash Apps, right? Whether you agree with his policies or not, or his news, what does that have to do with people choosing to donate money to his work? So one of the ways that they try to suppress the information and suppress the news from getting out to the people, you try to bankrupt the organization. You take money away from them. You prevent it. You make it so that people can't give them money for them to continue their news.
Widely discussed, this was widely reported at the time. It was widely documented that none of the promises she made to elicit those funds actually were ever realized or fulfilled. And of course, because she also had the right ideology, namely attacking a dissident to establishment orthodoxy, GoFundMe did nothing. GoFundMe does not care if you use GoFundMe to steal people's funds, to defraud well-intentioned people, as long as your politics are correct. And I'm going to state that so explicitly. I hope they sue me if they think that that's wrong. GoFundMe is a fraudulent company. It exists to help people steal money who have the right politics and to punish people who are using the funds for what it's promised, including journalistic outlets, if they have the wrong politics, as the Grayzone does in the eyes of virtually every establishment maven. Now, Max, we were going to have Clip Clarenberg on our show, I think, 6 weeks ago, and it turned out not to work out. I ended up having to cancel a couple shows during that week for personal reasons. But talk about what happened with that reporter who was going to or will be hired by Grayzone using these funds, and the reason that they were going to come on our show.
This is important too.
Yeah, I mean, this financial sabotage by GoFundMe and the powerful elements behind it follows a campaign of repression, state repression against our personnel or our would-be personnel. Kit Clarenberg in May was taken off a plane that had landed at Luton International Airport in the UK. He's a British citizen. By counter-terror police, he was taken into a room and he was interrogated for 8 hours about his work for the Grayzone. And his work for the Grayzone, he has revealed many covert intelligence intrigues spun out by the British state to, for example, plan terrorist attacks against Russian infrastructure. He's exposed Paul Mason, the British supposedly left-wing journalist and possible candidate for parliament on the Labour slate, as a security state collaborator. And it's this kind of journalism that wound Kit Clarenberg up in a windowless room with counter-terror police. We also have Wyatt Reed, who
and just to remind people, during the Snowden reporting, one of the many forms of retaliation we received was when my husband, David Miranda, was traveling back to Brazil from visiting Laura Poitras in Germany, where he was in part taking a part of the archive that had become corrupted that she had fixed. He was also detained exactly under that same law, accused of terrorism for his work with journalists on journalism, put also into that probably the same room, windowless room for 8 hours, cut off from outside contact, wouldn't let him speak to me or to the Guardian's reporters, was threatened the entire time with prison, was only released because the Brazilian government raised such a diplomatic scandal with the British government that they were forced to release him, and then he won a lawsuit prohibiting the use of that law against journalists in the future on the grounds that it violates the EU Human Rights Convention of Freedom of the Press. And so that amazed me that they used that law, it seems, against Kit Klarenberg in retaliation for his journalism. But go ahead and tell the other story that you wanted to mention, I think, about Wyatt.
Yeah, so in reference to Kit Klarenberg, that was probably one of the craziest stories I heard because, again, like he is a resident of the UK and he was detained in his own home country. Obviously, journalists do have to travel sometimes, right? And sometimes that travel could be international travel. So they were basically trying to hold Kit Klarenberg accountable because of his international travel, but not just because of that, but because of who he works for. One of the things that when they interrogated him, I remember reading that article, one of the questions that they continued to ask Kit was, what do you do at the Grayzone? What is the Grayzone? That kind of thing, right? So they're a target. The Grayzone is a target. It's not just them, like Mint Press News, same thing. I would say antiwar.com. Also, like a lot of these, anti-war publications, so to speak, are heavily attacked. I'll let him finish and tell you about Wyatt, and then I'm going to tell you the good news.
Yeah, well, I should also mention the National Union of Journalists condemned Kit's detention, and then Paul Mason's allies intimidated the National Union of Journalists to retracting that statement of condemnation. And they said Kit is harassing people, Kit is involved in all kinds of disinformation activities, but they never said what that harassment or disinformation constituted or consisted of. And it's just simply that he was exposing powerful people. You're not supposed to do that in the UK. You're supposed to be a stenographer for power. So the top union that's supposed to represent journalists totally sold him out. We've had this happen again and again. Wyatt Reed, no one spoke up for him when PayPal and Venmo financially sanctioned him, basically blocked him from receiving any kind of payment. This happened just like 3 or 4 weeks after he had been in Donetsk on the separatist side of the Donbass, reporting on Ukrainian human rights abuses when Wyatt's own hotel in Donetsk city was shelled, and he filmed it. He was 100 meters away from a US supplied howitzer hitting his hotel. So you're not supposed to do that. He never received any explanation from PayPal or Venmo. Me and Aaron Mate, when we went to, at the invitation of Patty Cosgrove, who's the CEO of Web Summit, the largest gathering of the international tech industry in Lisbon, Portugal. We found out on our way there that thanks to pressure from Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and his wife Olena, who was due to appear at that conference, we had been removed as speakers. And we constantly faced this pressure campaign. Aaron himself was the target of a lobbying campaign by the Ukrainian SBU security services, which was working through the FBI to pressure Twitter to remove users it didn't like. And Aaron, a Canadian citizen, was on that list. Twitter, this is under the old regime before Elon, thought that was even too much.
That was a step too far even for Twitter to have the FBI basically handing over Ukrainian intelligence list of American journalists or North American journalists who they dislike. Obviously the war in Ukraine is the CIA's top foreign policy priority. It's the top foreign priority of the entire foreign policy establishment in the West, and people who have been opposed to that war from the start, including doing reporting that undercuts the lies and the narratives that are told, are being targeted with genuine kind of persecution campaigns. I was put on various lists as well by the Ukrainian government, along with a bunch of other people who I proudly serve with as alleged propagandists of the Russian government in the eyes of President Zelensky for daring to question the idea that we should fund that war to the end. Max, let me ask you.
Okay, and you guys can see the rest of the interview there on Glenn Greenwald's channel, but I do want to share some good news. But yes, that's true. This is what they do. They target those people, those anti-war voices, especially those that have a different narrative in reference to the Ukraine war. They target you by hitting your pocket. They target you financially. They make it so that you cannot continue to report on what you're reporting on, right? But there is good news. So take that, GoFundMe. Kit Klarenberg actually reported the good news. Breaking, The Grayzone News second crowdfunder has already raised even more than the first, despite best efforts of British terror police, PayPal, GoFundMe, NAFO, and many others to knock us down. We bounce back stronger than ever each time, and we have our readers to thank. So yeah, it says defend the Grayzone independent journalism against the state, and you'll see that they've already raised, I think it's even higher than this now, because I looked at this earlier this morning. So that amount may be more now. But at this point in time, they had already raised over $93,000, which is great, which is absolutely great. And Kit does go on to say, respectful reminder to all Grayzone News supporters who so humbly gave to GoFundMe. You can easily cancel your donation and get a refund, while also, if you wish, lodging a complaint. We don't expect you to repurpose. Key thing is getting your money back. And I totally hear you there, Kit. He also said that Roger Waters increased his donation to a second time round. So thank you for your contribution to our journalism. Every little bit helps. So a happy ending to that story, which is good news. Thank you, Kim. Kim says it's 110,000 now. So that is awesome. So even more than they had originally raised on GoFundMe. Isn't that based? Thank you for this, Eric. So here is the new Grayzone fundraiser, that spotfund.com story. And so I guess the rest of you, we can all just give a big FU to GoFundMe. And I think I will be very cautious about using GoFundMe going forward. We're going to have to switch to something else for mutual aid events. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. JB said, I had Wyatt Reed on my channel as well. That's right. Kim says, probably Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Yeah, I know. When I first heard this story, I was like, it's not me, not this Sabrina. All right, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, let's go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me out with the algo. Thank you very much. And we are moving on to our final story. Yes, we are. So where do I begin? Recently, we discussed how Bernie Sanders has been on this press tour to basically tell people to get behind Joe Biden, regardless, even though that there is a candidate such as Cornel West running on these progressive issues that Bernie Sanders also ran on. But Cornel West's campaign goes even a step further, I think. Bernie Sanders is not in support of Cornel West's run because he's running third party. We also discussed how Crystal Ball also feels that people should just get in line behind Joe Biden and that you shouldn't do this third party risk. You know, people are so afraid to break away from this duopoly because I honestly believe some people have Trump derangement syndrome. And I also believe that some people are trying to prevent any type of outside effort that can really fundamentally change this corrupt system. And as long as you continue to vote for Joe Biden, as long as you continue to do what we've been doing the past couple of years, you are never going to change the system. You are never going to reform a system if you continue to play their game. So we have to ask, what is it all for? Now we have Kyle Kulinski right after the rant from Crystal. Here comes Kyle, basically to back up what Crystal is saying. And now he has issue with what Cornel West is doing. We're going to start off with this video clip here. Shout out to Post Duopolis for this clip. And then we're going to show you a little bit of before footage to show you how Kyle's viewpoints have changed. Let's get into it.
Now, on the Cornel West front, look, understand something. I would like to talk to him and ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what?
Why haven't you spoken to Cornel West? Why hasn't Breaking Points or Crystal Kyle and Friends interviewed Cornel West about his campaign yet? Cornel West has been on Black Power Media multiple times. He's been on this channel multiple times. He's been on RBN multiple times. He's been on. Why haven't they interviewed Cornel West yet? Because it's a Green Party run? Breaking Points can interview Republican candidates, but you haven't interviewed Cornel West yet? Okay.
What do you think you're doing here? Do you actually think you can win? Because you can't, because we don't have ranked choice voting.
This is a very cocky, entitled behavior. I don't like cocky, entitled behavior. First of all, let me play this again, and then I'm going to tell you the problem with this.
Now, on the Cornel West front, look, understand something. I would like to talk to him and ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here?
It's the respect issue for me. This isn't someone that Kyle does not know. Kyle knows Cornel West. Crystal knows Cornel West. Now, he's taken this. I think his approach to this is worse than Crystal's approach. For Kyle to say to Cornel West, what do you think you're doing here? Cornel West is your elder. This is someone that you do know. And I don't like this disrespect that Kyle has towards Cornel West, almost in a sense to tell him, you better get in line. What do you think you're doing here? As if Kyle Kulinski has control over what happens politically through the progressive movement. Is that the problem? Is that the problem, that Kyle and Jean think that they have control over the progressive movement so that people that move outside of these spaces in a different way than they feel should be done, they have to come and tell them to get in line? Who do they think they are? What do you think you're doing here? You see this sense of entitlement and this cocky ass attitude? I don't like it. Let's continue.
Do you actually think you can win? Because you can't, because we...
Do you actually think Marianne can win? For real question, guys. Does Kyle Kulinski actually think that Marianne Williamson can win the DNC nomination for the Democratic Party? Does he actually believe that? No, he knows she can't win. He knows the DNC is not going to let her win. There's a difference between winning and building a movement. Kyle is looking at this as a transactional type of thing. We want you to do this to win. That's it. That's all he sees. Just one straight line. He's not looking at the bigger picture. And this is something I recorded with Bree earlier today on Bad Faith. This is something that I mentioned to Bree earlier today. I think it was a mistake to look at one strategy in reference to some type of political change. And when we look at what happened with the progressive movement and Justice Democrats, there were multiple things on the table in reference to what the organization believed and what they were going to do. But there was only one strategy that they ended up doing. One of the other things they were supposed to do is to implement instant runoff voting to make third party and independent candidates more viable. That never happened. Google it. You'll see it's still on the list. That never happened. It's not even on their website. So they did one strategy, and that strategy was to put these candidates through the Democratic Party to tackle the national level. So the House, right? And the White House. Problem is, there was no plan B. They never sat back and said, what do we do next if it doesn't work? That's why we're where we are right now. There was no plan B. So what should have been done? There are three strategies, because I thought about this. There are three strategies that I believe should have been implemented at the same time, all at once. One, if you are going to do the candidate route, this is how you do it. You get candidates to run through the Democratic Party, third party, and independent on the national and the local level at the same time. They were only focused on the national level. They were only focused on the Democratic Party. You should have covered all fronts. Two, when it comes to the local level, this is something, again, they overlooked. When it comes to the local level, there should have been grassroots mobilization to organize people in these ballot initiative states to get ballot measures on the ballot to pass progressive policies. We've done this here in Massachusetts. That's why we passed so many progressive policies, but it's not just blue states like Massachusetts. Nebraska has done this. South Dakota expanded Medicaid. Again, this is by ballot measures through grassroots mobilization of the people, not relying on a politician that's supposed to represent you and come in and do what they're supposed to do. So there's that. And third, organizing mutual aid on the ground, meaning all of those progressive policies that Bernie was running on, that the squad were running on. There should have been an on-the-ground movement to go along with that, to demand those policies. And so when Bernie lost, that movement would still continue. If we would have done all three of those strategies at the same time, I think we would be better off than we are right now. And I think you would have seen some concessions. But they had one strategy. So if you're looking at a tree has multiple branches. They decided to tackle one branch instead of tackling multiple branches at the same time. We could have had this shit on lock. Like, I'm gonna keep it real. If we had people running third party too, and we had people running independent, all progressive doesn't mean you have to go through the Democratic Party. We could have had this shit on lock, but no, they didn't want to do that because they weren't thinking about the big picture. And two, it's not easy. Let's continue.
Don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting.
So this is an edit here by Postuopoulos. And what's your plan for getting ranked choice voting, Kyle? Voting for a party that fights against it. That's a really good point. Stop talking about what we don't have and start talking about what you're going to do to get it. We all know this. We all know we don't have ranked choice voting. What are you going to do to get it? Because say what you want. Here's the thing. Say what you want about Andrew Yang and his forward party, but that's like their number one thing. They just help people get ranked choice voting in Nevada. So it just, this is a look of desperation to me. Look at the desperate look. Where'd I go? Look at the desperate look on his face. He looks desperate. But you don't own Cornel West. And Dr. West can do whatever the fuck he wants. These people really think they own. See how they think they own this movement? We own the progressive movement. You got to do it our way. This is the gatekeeping that I was telling you guys about. Let's continue.
So what's your highest goal that you think you could achieve? Is it the 5% for the Green Party? Is that what it is? So that you can get matching funds and make it more viable? But again, I hate to tell you, the Green Party and no third party will be viable unless and until we get ranked choice voting.
I really feel like this is a very condescending tone. I really don't feel. Cornel West, first of all, is not stupid. Cornel West is an academic scholar. And I really don't like the way this message, the way that it's coming from Kyle Kulinski. It comes across as very entitled to me.
Because until that point, there's always going to be this perception you're just a spoiler candidate. And by the way, if we get into a general...
That point right here, sorry, the spoiler candidate. Watch this.
Because until that point, there's always going to be this perception you're just a spoiler candidate.
And to this point, whose perception? Why should we care? Right. Why do you care what other people think about you? Why do you care what someone else's perception is of you and what you do? Is that how you're going to live your life? That's not how I live my life. What are we doing here? Now all of a sudden we care about what other people say about the progressive movement and the way that people move in these. Now all of a sudden that matters.
And by the way, if we get into a general election and it's Biden versus Trump, and Trump ends up winning because Cornel West got 5% of the vote or something, or 3% of the vote, and he gets blamed, that's going to set the movement back so much. People are going to look at leftists as...
What movement? What people? What leftists? Cornel West is the one running as a leftist. He's just not running through your crummy ass party. This is really funny because I'm going to show you what he said before. I'm going to show you how people have changed.
Spoiled brats who are just getting in the way. Now, that's totally separate from the question as to whether or not the spoiler effect actually is real. But there's going to be a perception that it's real, and everybody's going to blame the left for...
What he really is saying is, when he says there's going to be a perception that it's real and everyone is going to blame the left, you know what he's really saying? He's really saying everyone is going to blame him. Everyone's going to blame him and Jink, two of the founders of Justice Democrats. That's really what this is about. How much you want to bet he hasn't already been contacted and people are saying like, hey, you better get Cornel West in line. This is going to look bad for you. Remember, when you criticize progressive movement, when you criticize the progressive strategies, you are criticizing Kyle and Jink Uygur. Never forget that. That's what he's worried about. He's worried about his own damn reputation. It's not about what people say about the left. It's not about what people are going to say in reference to spoiler or anything like that. It's about people criticizing his reputation. That is what it's about.
Donald Trump winning. Now, I don't want that to happen. I know you guys don't want that to happen. So I'd love to ask Cornel West, like, what exactly are you doing here? Now,
what exactly are you doing here?
He was going to run. He should have run as a Democrat. Why do I say that? What's he polling?
He's such a liar. We're going to call this out. Now he's saying if he was going to run, he should have run as a Democrat. This guy is such a fucking liar. He said the exact opposite when Cornel West announced he was running. We got that video too. Let's get through this. I'm sorry. It's just so many lies. It's so many lies. And then people wonder why, like, why do you guys rag on Crystal and Kyle? Because these people are fucking liars. And we can see right through the bullshit.
Doing here. Now, if he was going to run, he should have run as a Democrat. Why do I say that? What's he polling at now? 1%?
Lie number. You see how he's just lying? What's he polling at? 1%. Right now, he's polling at 4%.
Well, Marianne Williamson is barely getting any media coverage, and she's still at 10% or more.
10% in the rigged primary, she has no chance of winning.
So she's at 10 times what Cornel West is, simply because she decided to run as a Democrat.
2.5 times actually in two completely unrelated elections. These are just blatant lies. They didn't look, he's not even doing no research anymore. Kyle got lazy. Tell it like it is. He ain't doing no research. He's just saying shit. Anything. Desperate. Begging the people.
So I don't know what the strategy is. If you don't have ranked choice voting, if you don't get rid of first past the post voting, you're just doing a virtue signal fest. That's all it is.
He gonna talk about virtue signal with Marianne Williamson running in a party that is never gonna let her have the nomination. See, again, one way thinking. If you're not gonna win, you don't have a chance. So why are you doing this? Okay, to that point, why is Marianne doing it? Maybe the point is bigger than that. Maybe it's building the third party movement, which you failed to do, even though it was a part of Justice Democrats in the very beginning, which you mentioned with Justice Democrats, to implement instant runoff voting to make third party and independent candidates more viable. So it just, to me, this is what?
If you actually want to win, if you actually care about getting the country to change for the better, There's an intelligent way to do that and not a way that self-disenfranchises you.
There's an intelligent way to do it. Oh, so Cornel West is dumb now. Kyle's the one that's smart. Kyle Kulinski is smart. The one that's still telling you to do the same damn strategy that has no fucking way of winning. Why isn't Kyle telling you to build a fucking movement on the ground? Make that up. Let me know, people. Let me know. Why isn't Kyle Kulinski telling you to organize with people on the ground and build some type of coalition with people on the ground? Why isn't he telling you to do that? Why isn't Kyle Kulinski telling you to donate mutual aid to people in your community or build mutual aid groups? Why isn't Kyle Kulinski telling you to organize some type of protest against this corrupt government that continues to shit on working class people and he continues to funnel you right back into it? Make it make sense. Why isn't he telling you to do that? Because that shit is not profitable. That's why. I said it.
From being taken seriously. So I don't know what he's thinking. I would love to ask.
Taken seriously by who?
Ask him, like, what exactly is the goal here? Is the goal to...
I would love to ask him what he's thinking, but we have not interviewed him about his campaign. And it has been months since Cornel West has announced, but I'd love to ask him what he's thinking.
Get to 5%. Does he understand that the only way the Green Party or the Libertarian Party or any of these other parties would be viable is if you get ranked choice voting first? Does he understand that? I don't know. I don't know.
Does he understand? Kyle Kulinski letting you know he don't think Cornel West is intelligent enough to understand how this even works. Cornel West, who was a part of Bernie Sanders campaigns, now all of a sudden Kyle Kulinski is sitting here telling his audience, making his audience believe that Cornel West is not intelligent enough. Boy, take 2 seats. Let me pull up some old clips. Because I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you how these people are fucking frauds. When Cornel West announced his campaign and he said he was running with the People's Party, let's take it back. I told you that the same people complaining that he's running People's Party and should do Green Party would complain again once he ran Green Party. Let me show you, because these people, they're fucking liars.
The backlash that's happening online, there's a decent amount of backlash where people are like, what are you doing? Like, do you know like who these people are? And then I see a lot of people making a point, which I think is a fair point, which is like, if you're going to run as a Green Party or an independent, because the Green Party, for example, I think the last election they had ballot access for 48 states.
Yeah, they have a real organization.
Yeah, even like the Libertarians have between like 48 states and 50 and all the states. Yeah. You know what I mean? So as far as third parties go, the only ones that are even remotely viable, and I use that term loosely, is the Green Party and the Libertarians.
I mean, you also have, DSA out there, which has never fielded a presidential candidate before, but they have.
She's so damn. DSA is not a political party for those who are not aware. How does Crystal not know that shit? But you hear what's being said here, right?
Chapters nationwide, and it's a real organization with some sort of, infrastructure that could theoretically be mustered behind you.
The backlash that's happening online, there's a decent amount of backlash where people are like, what are you doing? Like, do you know like who these people are? And then I see a lot of people making a point, which I think is a fair point, which is like, if you're going to run as a Green Party or an independent, because the Green Party, for example, I think the last election they had ballot access for 48 states.
Yeah, they have a real organization.
Yeah, even like the Libertarians have between like 48 states and 50 and all the states. Yeah. You know what I mean? So as far as third parties go, the only ones that are even remotely viable, and I use that term loosely, is the Green Party and the Libertarians.
I mean,
you see this? Well, if you're going to do a Green Party, they're remotely viable, right? And then as soon as he switched to Green Party, then he's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're going to give this election to Trump. By the way, both of them had lied about this. Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden without Cornel West. So why are Crystal and Kyle pretending to be mainstream media? Why are they having the same talking points as CNN and MSNBC? This was 2020. Watch this. This was Kyle 2020. As a left winger who will not vote for Biden, I want you to know I'm 100% okay with you blaming me if Trump wins a second term. I mean it. Blame me. Then get to thinking real hard how you're going to get me to support your candidate the next time. Maybe even ask me, I'll tell you. That was April 13th of 2020. So what the hell happened to Kyle? Money. People say, no change, no change. Shout out to Neoliberal Tears for this one. Here's the chat. Watch this. Look at this. Old school.
Jill Stein simply did not swing the election. It's just a fact. She just didn't. It's just a fact. If you take the words of the people who voted for Jill Stein, which why wouldn't you, instead of you superimposing onto them what you think they would have done or should have done if Jill wasn't in the race, instead of doing that, just fucking listen to them. And they tell you only 35% of them would have voted for Hillary. And so.
But he's doing the same thing right now. He's doing the same thing that he was complaining about. He's doing the same thing right now. You see how this works, right? Okay.
She wouldn't have been able to win. And on top of all that, this is such a stupid conversation we're having anyway. 9% of Democrats voted for Donald Trump. But they want to shame the third-party voters. Why? Very simple. Because you got to fucking fall in line and pick between the establishment candidates.
Isn't that exactly what he's doing in reference to Cornel West right now? You got to fall in line and pick between two establishment candidates. So what the fuck happened to Kyle Kulinski? I don't usually cuss that much on this show, but this is some bullshit. Let's continue.
That's the message. Shut the fuck up, fall in line, and pick between the two candidates. Stop being a petulant child voting.
That's the same thing he's doing to Dr. West right now.
For the candidate that you agree with more on the policy substance. What the fuck are you doing? Fall in line and vote for one of the two candidates. That's the underlying argument here. And the effect of these indictments. Now, we just went over the indictments in detail.
So something happened. They sold out. It's just the way that he talked to Cornel West in such a disrespectful manner. What do you think you're doing here? Do you understand that? White liberals trying to tell black people to get in line. And this is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly what I said to Glenn last night. These are the kind of people, especially the ones up here in the Northeast. They're all for this shit. They're all for these policies and equality and all this yada yada. As long as you play their game, as long as you do what they tell you to do. They still want to be in control. They may not be as overt with it as the Republicans are, but the motherfucker's still covert. This is exactly what they do. You do what I tell you to do. How dare you step outside the lines? The same people that he was making fun of in that clip is the person that he became today. What a fraud. I'd really like to talk to him to also get to understand what is he thinking. Probably don't want to talk to you talking like that. If you want to talk to Cornel West and hear what he's thinking, you might want to come with some respect first, because that's some bullshit. Sabby don't like it. And I see right through it. And I think it's just ridiculous. These people are so desperate. Oh no, we're going to lose part of the progressive vote to Cornel West and he's running Green Party. Oh no, what are we going to do? You know you can't win. But if you push back at them and say, you know, Marianne can't win. Now what? Well, if Marianne don't win, then we'll just have to vote for Joe Biden. You see how this works? And you never get any significant change. All they want to do is push you in the Democratic Party. That's it. That's all this is. This is a scam. This is a way for them to continue to make more money. And I told you guys, when you look at the algorithm, if I came onto this show and I was pumping up Joe Biden and I was telling you to vote for the Democratic Party, oh, we'd be way into the 100,000s. That's the Roland Martins. That's the David Pacmans. When you have that message, oh, they love to promote you. That works with the algorithm. Telling you to leave both parties does not work with the algorithm. Telling you Trump also works with the algorithm, although some of them have switched to DeSantis because that's what the donors want. So it's hilarious to me when people will point at me or people at RBN and say, you guys are just grifters. How much money do you think we fucking make on here? But you'll ignore the obvious. People are fucking millionaires continuing to sell you into the Democratic Party. But they not grifting. They still telling you to do the same shit that you've been doing probably most of your adult life anyway. And nothing has come from it. Nothing has come from it. Have any progressive policies been passed on the national level? Hell to the no. Do you have Medicare for all? Think about it. Do we have housing for all? No, we don't have these damn things. These policies haven't been passed. Vote for Joe Biden to push him up. They got so desperate now that Kyle is saying Joe Biden has done so much better than I thought. He's actually really great. Yeah, I think I'm gonna vote for Joe Biden this time. Man, if you ain't no damn used car salesman, miss me with this shit. Because that's exactly what it sounds like. You're really going to try to sell that shit to working class and poor people and tell them that this economy is working out so great for them? No, this economy is working out for people like Kyle, who's a fucking millionaire. This economy is not working for working class people. It's not working for poor people. And only someone as slimy and such like a used car salesman would sit up here and try to sell that shit to you. That's all I got to say. Now we're going to go to comments, and then I do have an announcement as well. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Kyle, what are you doing is what you should have said to the squad. Thank you for this as well. I do succular talk. We're going to do call-in tonight too. Thank you, Eric. At this point, I hope Trump wins, and it's because of West and our movement. Biden scares me more, and he will escalate in Ukraine to World War III. Interesting. Thank you, Delthea. You can't argue that West isn't high enough in the polls to run and argue that West is too high in the polls with the power to spoil the election. That's a good point. Thank you, Philip. I'm libertarian. The Republicans plus Democrats should know why they lost. And thank you, Jay. Kyle will get mad at the DNC for rigging the primaries against Marianne. Then we'll tell lefties to keep running in the Democratic Party. Contradiction much. Exactly. We're going to do call in tonight, but first I want to announce an important event that is coming up September 4th. This is a Julian Assange rally. This is here in Boston, September 4th from 4 to 7 p.m. This is Cooper Frost Austin House. This is, one second. Told you I have a cold. This is Cooper Frost Austin House. This is 21 Lenian Street in Cambridge. Senators Warren and Markey. So they're going to be protesting outside. Free Julian Assange now. And it says Senator Warren, and it gives the phone numbers here for Warren, Massachusetts office, her DC office, and Markey's Massachusetts office and Markey's DC office. Again, that's September 4th, Labor Day rally for Julian Assange. And this is put on by Assange Defense. All right. Okay. We are going to do call-in. This is the last official call-in. I don't know if I told you guys, but they are moving away from call-in. They want people to use locals now. So this is it. I wasn't even able to upload the last call-in. So this is it. It's snooze or lose. And then we'll try to see how locals works next week. I have to look into it and test it out first if I decide to use that. But what can you say? All right, Eric's going to come in for a bit. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back and we'll head on over to call-in based.
All right, here we go. Yeah, will it be the last call-in? We don't really know.
Smash the like button.
Yeah, smash the like button. Do what that nice lady said. What's Roger putting here? Throwing in a super chat. Washington, you got. Yeah, she's gonna have to catch up with the next ballot measure next time, Roger, because it's getting late and Sabby's getting tired, I think. But she's going to do the call in, and it's up to you guys to not drag the call in on too long. She's going to try to make it a short call in. Oh, we got another one popping up here. Thanks. Great to see a new member, Ken Schaefer. We like new members. I appreciate that. Let's see. All right, this is a part of the show where we give Sabby a little break. I'm going to throw the call-in link in the chat again. She usually posts it. And while call-in is still active, the program and the site, which it seems to be, you can do call-in on your on the browser through the link. You can do call-in on your smartphone. You put in the you bring it up on your smartphone, search for Sabby Sabs, and yeah, apparently they're going to be. I'll put up the thing too here. Last official call-in. We'll see if we get more or not. Apparently, what Rumble's doing is they're trying to shift it all to their locals platform, and they must be adding a voice option to locals because that hasn't been. That hasn't been a thing before. As far as I could tell, locals seem to be just a text platform, but now they're making it we'll make it voice too, and then hopefully it can be a similar thing there, and we'll see how it goes. But there is one other thing I wanted to talk about, a little something I've been working on. And let me see if I can bring that up. We click over here, but it's about like, what do we do about this mess? What can we, how can we really have, I mean, in my opinion, what we need is a real movement. We need, and so then there's this question. I mean, we have the Dr. West campaign, which, I'm cautiously excited about, and I'm, that I would definitely be supporting and whatnot. But I feel like we need a movement, and what really needs to be central to the movement, to me, is money and corruption. I mean, when you dig down to the core problem, that's what we're dealing with, what we're wrestling with. So what I threw together is a thing I'm calling MCDS, right? Everybody loves an acronym, maybe, but it's something you can remember. MCDS. M for money, C for corruption, D for demands, and S for the solutions. And I'm saying it's a simple framework for understanding how our government really works and how we can fix it. So you got the M, the money. When you look at why things happen, why everybody from commentators to politicians to the president, why they're doing what they're doing, it's because big money. It's because they serve the big money interests. Big money runs everything. You have any why question. Why are Democrats so weak? Why are Republicans so vicious and gross? Well, it's because they are paid to do that way. And it brings us to the next letter, the C, the corruption. It's all about corruption. Our so-called representatives do not represent us. They represent the billionaires. They represent the banks, the mega corporations, the MIC, and it's just straight up corruption. And I think any political discussion that does not hammer on and finish out on corruption and not call them out as corruption, then you're missing. You're basically missing the plot. It's basically, how are you going to fix anything if you don't really see how it operates? So C is for corruption, and they need to be called out relentlessly. Our so-called representatives, what they are corrupt. So then, what do you do about it? If you're going to have a movement or a general strike or anything like that, what you need, I mean, you have to have demands. This is something I put out there sometimes. What are our demands? How are we out there trying to get something done and we don't have demands? Having a clear list of demands is crucial, is what I'm saying, and fixing big money in politics and government needs to be at the top of that list. And so I'm saying, I'm going to get to Roger's funny chat later in a minute. But what I'm saying, come on, mouse. Why is my mouse going over there? Oh, wait. Here we go. So what I'm saying is, you need a clear list of demands with corruption at the top. So it's the idea of a proposed list, the 11 demands. So I'm just going to talk about the top one, fix big money in politics and government. And then, so you have, and then the demands get into healthcare and the whole list of it, but you have to put the money and corruption at the top. And then flowing from the demands are the solutions, because then when you're seeing what the real problem is with the corruption and the money, then you get to the solutions. A movement, if we're going to have a movement, I think we must, it has to be about more than just elucidating what the problems are. We need to provide a vision of what our better world would look like, and we need to provide a path towards reaching it. And then towards that, in the demands, you have the idea of exactly concrete things to be doing, passing laws for clean elections at the state level, enacting a constitutional amendment to deal with it at the federal level, with corporations are not people, money is not speech. And, and at the federal level, again, you get into regulating campaign finances, and it's of a piece of about fixing it. And the other piece of it I'll put in there is, I'll point out, is what I would call the 11 demand strategy. You have the demands, you embrace mutual aid and direct actions as crucial tools towards doing these things. And then you ask every candidate, do you support these demands, and what concretely are you doing to enact them? And if they're not on board with that, you call it out what they are. You call them corrupt. If they are on board, you give them support. I just say, and then if you got like Democrats and Republicans, if they're not on board, no votes, no money, no praise, no little thanks for the crumbs. And if they are on board, like a Dr. West, then you support them. You support them fully. But the other big part of it is there are going to be roadblocks. It's not going to be like an easy road at all. And we're going to need to figure out a way to inspire masses of people and get them, in the streets, locally, in DC, and to be saying, this is our movement, this is what we're demanding, and we're not going to settle for anything less. So that's my little pitch for my new thing, MCDS.
That's right.
Corruption, demands, and solutions. Oh, and I got to, right, let me clear this. All right. Oh, and you can see this, if you just go to 11demands.org or just search 11 demands, you can find this stuff. And then Roger being a smart ass, he put in, you making this like a Microsoft certification? Whatever it takes, Roger, whatever it takes. All right, that's my right. Spiel. Will this be the last call in? Will the next one be locals?
At least on this app. Now I have to figure out the locals thing and see how that works. But we will be joining. I'm
still wondering though. They move so slow. I don't know. It may just limp along like this for a while. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. The problem is I can't upload any episodes on call-in. That's been the big problem. But here we are, guys. So official last call-in. This is it until I move to locals. So let's chat. I don't know what else to call it. We could chat about so much. I'm pretty sure you guys have plenty of things to talk about or discuss. We had the interview with Dr. Shiva. I'm pretty sure people may want to talk about that or any of the stories we covered tonight. And let's head on over there. So that link is pinned to the top of the chat. I'll see you on call-in, guys. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.